Hey everybody, welcome today. So what I'm gonna show you here is a start to finish process of protecting your furniture with our Rustic Lumber Furniture Oil and Hydrocoat. And what I have here today is a big, beautiful piece of monkey pod that we import from Costa Rica, and it's ready to go. We surface this on our joint wood machine because that's the first step of every finishing process, is getting a nice flat slab, getting all the little imperfections filled. But we have that all prepped up. This is actually the back side. I already have the front side sanded, ready to go. That way, make this a little quicker. But I'm gonna go through all the process, the steps, the grits that we use for the sander, all that good stuff. Now, I want to note here, we have some really nice Festool equipment that we use for sanding. We have a Rotex. We actually have this Planex sander that we do big slabs with. Now, I don't want you to think that you gotta have some really high-end sanding equipment. That is not at all the case. You can do just as good of a finish at home in your garage with just a simple $80 Bosch sander and a $50 rigid vacuum cleaner, and you're gonna get the same quality of work. Just work through the grits that we will show you here. And the very first grit I'm gonna start with is 60 to work all the lines out. Now, I kind of wish I had a second camera. I thought I had a second one to set up closer to record this process, but I don't. But what I'm gonna help do to kind of show a little better is each step, which a lot of people do this. They'll take a pencil and they'll draw all across their finished wood. So that way when they sand, it gives them a better reference that you sanded evenly. So if you're new with sanding and you're not, comfortable being able to see how the wood is actually sanded all the way, this is a good cheat. Just get some lines with a pencil and sand till they're all gone. All right, so let's get going on this process. First thing I wanna do is I have all my sandpaper lined up over there. I'm gonna hit the edges because I just wanna ease the edge over a little bit so it's not so pointy and sharp. On this, I'm gonna use my Rotex sander so I can kind of round it over here. All right, so we're gonna switch this over to our Planex sander. Now this is, anyone familiar with Festool equipment, you wanna know the exact model, this is what? The LS2 225 EQI. Means something fancy. But this is the newer Planex that they came out with, I think roughly 1 to 2 years ago. The old Planex sanders, because these are originally designed for sheetrock work. They work great for woodworking. But the original Planex sander just was a full rotating sander, which means it just spun in a full circle. Now, regular hand sanders, your regular orbitals are called random orbit, where that means it's actually kind of like, while spinning, it spins and orbits. What that does is reduces scratching and swirls. That's the, you want the random orbital style for wood. So that's what's great about this Planex. This newer style, it's not just an orbital, but it's a random orbit. So it sands just like a regular 5-inch sander. Does a great job on wood slabs. I love using this thing for our big stuff. So let's get the first. Now what's gonna be kind of the longest time is gonna be your lower grit because the wood's more rough. You're gonna have more inconsistency from the planer mark. Really, once you get through that 60, 80, 100 grit, things start going a lot faster, but you really gotta work and pay attention at the lower grits, because if you rush that, then you're gonna have to start all over again. So let's start on here. Okay, so I got the first cut done, I call them cuts, each layer that you do, because essentially you're cutting a certain amount that grit allows you. But the first cut is the most important. If you do not get those planer marks out, any imperfections in the cut of the, like from drum sanders or any type of preparation, surfacing preparation is done, if you don't get it out now at 60 grit, the higher you go, you're never gonna get it out because it's cutting less and less each time you go to a higher grit. And then you're permanently gonna have those underlining imperfections in the wood. So make sure that 60 grit, you do spend the time. And if you've seen my fancy old sander had that halo light in it, which really helped show like the shadow of where you weren't sanded all the way. But you don't need that fancy sander. Simply just buy a $50 LED, you know, like ceiling light bar that you hang up in your garage with a cord plug it in. And I mean, we use those sometimes too, and it just shines, lay it down and let it shine across the table. That's gonna really help a lot to see the little problems. I'll show that later on another video, but, and there is some really fancy lights that like Surf Prep makes that are better to really show for like the inspection lights. But anyways, let's get to the next grit, everybody. That was 60, 80's coming up. Okay, so there's 80, but to help show you what we're doing, let's put some more pencil lines on here. I don't know if the camera really can zoom in on that very well, but we'll try. Okay, there we go. There's 80. Man, I need a pocket knife to sharpen this pencil. Okay, what am I at? We got, that's the 60. So now I have some 80. Let's get that lined up to the holes. And I like to wear some earplugs, help drown out the noise. Music buds are nice when I'm not using my phone for recording. All right, but this is going a lot faster, everybody. Just, you gotta have patience at 60 grit. Just have patience. After that, I swear, the extra 10 to 20 minutes you spend, maybe 30, I don't know. All that time is gonna save you in the end. Okay, So that was 80 grit. I really like how that came out. So after 80 grit, you really start seeing the beauty of the wood. Everything is now at this point, your imperfections are cut out and things get better because you're only making it smoother. So those first two grits, 60 and 80, take your time, because after that, it makes life a lot better and everything gets a lot more beautiful. But let me, let's see, there was something I need to do first. I got a pencil over here. All right. So word of advice with the pencil thing across here, if you do that, as you progress through higher grits, be aware of how hard you're pushing the pencil down, because at the lower grits, you're cutting deeper into the wood. So removing the pencil line is easier because you're cutting deeper, let alone you need to cut deeper at the lower grits to get the imperfections out. But as the higher you go, the less depth of wood you're actually gonna cut through. And you don't wanna have to cut through a lot of depth the higher you go, because it's not gonna cut through it. So as you progress, be aware of how you do your pencil line. Get lighter and lighter and lighter with it. Don't press it down as dark. So now that I'm going on 100 grit, we're gonna draw it up again. And I'm gonna start getting a little lighter with it because I don't really have to be hammering it as much from 100 grit. Plus, as the smoother you make it, the less, the more closed the pores are, which makes the pencil lead press in a little less. Okay, so 100 grit, here we go. Man, this stuff is really, really pretty. Okay, let's switch this over. Yep, that was 80. Let's do 100. And some people might think, from 80, can't you jump up to 120 right away? Yeah, you could, but it's just gonna make you take more time at 120. So as silly as it seems, doing an extra grit of sanding actually saves time in the long run, because you're spending less time at 120 trying to get those scratches out. All right, let's get these put in. Okay, so 100 grit done. Keep hitting it. Let's see, do our pencil lines first. So now we're on to 120 grit. After 120, we hit 150. After 150, 180, then 220, and then we're gonna finish at 320. Okay, so we're on with 150, and we're gonna bump up to 180 now. All right, everyone, so my last grit that I just did not get recorded because I'm using a cell phone and running like at 60 frames per minute for these stupid good YouTube videos takes up a lot of space. So anyways, I just got done with 180 grit though. On certain species, stuff like white oak or hickory, those really hard species of wood, you really don't have to go above 180 grit. That's gonna be enough, way more than enough to apply the furniture oil. But if you're doing softer species like maple, poplar, you know, stuff like that, you know, going more to 220 to 320 is gonna help a lot because it's gonna close the pores of the wood. It's gonna absorb less. It's gonna give it a little better moisture resistance that way. This monkey pod though, it's a pretty hard wood like walnut. On walnut, I'm still gonna go to 220. The monkey pod, I'm gonna take it up to 320. And the reason is it has like a open cell structure wood. You can literally see all the interlocking grain. It's like mini microscopic straws. And my goal is to try to seal those up as much as possible without going too far. So that way it makes it a little more durable. So I'm gonna go up 2 more grits. I have 220, then 320. Like I said, if it was white oak, I would stop at 180. If it's walnut, I'm gonna go to 220. So let's do 320 here. All right, at 220, it feels pretty amazing. Really close to being done here, boys. We got 1 more grit to do. Now you could, from like 220 to 320, go in between grits like 220 to 240 or 280. But in my opinion, once you start getting as smooth as 220, bumping up 100 grit, up to 320, skipping, you know, 100 grit in between is gonna be perfectly fine. So reason I really prefer this big sander over our smaller sander, which even this sander is a 6-inch, which is bigger than normal. So funny, I call it a small sander when a small sander is actually more like the 5-inch is a typical size. But Best Tool has a 6-inch, a 5-inch, and a 3-inch sander. And this big one is, I believe, 7 inches. But anyways, let's get to it. A lot of people that are not used to sanding too often when they're sanding and there's an imperfection that they're getting impatient with and they really want it gone, they'll tilt the sander down and kind of dig into it. Big problem is you're gonna have a bunch of dips all over. Do not tilt your sander in. Do not get impatient during the sanding process because everything's gonna look bad if you do not take your time. So keep your sander nice and flat and on the surface. Take your time. It's gonna have to sand. Essentially, if there is any dips or anything in your wood, the whole surface has to go down to that lowest level of the dip. But what I like about this big Planex sander is with the bigger diameter, essentially it bridges over the surface. So you're gonna get a flatter surface when you're done sanding. But the thing is, it does kind of make you feel a little bit more impatient because the area you're sanding takes more time because it's a bigger amount of square inch compared to this. But overall, it is actually faster and smoother and flatter. It just feels amazing because you don't just feel those micro kind of dips. Everything just feels amazing. So always try to use the biggest diameter sander you can, but the majority of people only have a 5-inch sander. That's gonna work just fine. Just take your time with it and work evenly and it's gonna turn out really good. But anyways, that part is done. I am sanded to 320 grit. This is the back side of the table, so I'm gonna apply only 1 coat of furniture oil. I do not need 2, but I do want to coat every side of the slab because you want to give it equal protection and it helps with the slab to acclimate evenly. So let's get 1 coat on the back side and then we're gonna flip it over and apply 2 coats on the top side. Let's do it. So what I got here, we got gloves, disposable mixing cup, popsicle stick. You can buy them brand new or buy some popsicles for your kids. White Scotch-Brite pads. We're gonna get fancy and use the sander as a buffer. If you want to, you can simply just get one of these nice little handheld grips, or you can just freehand it a little bit like that. Some people use those fancy little plastic spatulas and smear it all over and often end up wasting a lot of product, but I like using white Scotch-Brite pads and I like using it on my sander. Something else cool, I'll show you in a little bit. I have a product or a tool called Gem Polisher, big old 11-inch big old diameter piece, but they're kind of expensive, these little white Scotch-Brites. I only like to use that gem polisher if I have more than one table to do at a time, so that way I'm not wasting, because once it cures in here, these are trash. So anyways, we're gonna mix up. I got an open can already I'm gonna use rather than opening one of those brand new ones. Start off by applying gloves. Put those on so you don't get your hands messy and to give you better protection for yourself. Now this size, this table, I'm probably gonna go with, because I sealed it up pretty good with the sanding, let's do 100 milliliter. That would be close, yeah, let's go with that. So 5-to-1 ratio. So if I got 100 milliliter, let's see, that's 20. So we're gonna add 20 milliliter of the hardener. This is a small can because I had an extra one of those laying around. Normally, you're gonna have the bigger can. Now what the hardener does is I wouldn't necessarily say it makes the product harder, but it does make it more durable and makes it cure quicker. So that's the biggest reason for the product, for the hardener. With this, you know, you're gonna be ready for a second coat in 24 hours. Mix this up, and if I end up needing some more, no problem, we'll mix them on the fly, but I don't like making too much at a time because you're just wasting. First, I'm gonna just show you, this thing's kind of grody, but what this essentially is, these are blocks, you can buy them on Amazon cheap. It has some hook and loop Velcro, so then you could hook it on there, you know, and do it by hand. But man, this one like has, I don't even know, some sort of, it gets built up over time with the oil, so then you throw them away. But I'll just show you a little bit doing it by hand, and then I'm gonna speed it up with this thing. So we got it a little mixed up. Let's start on one spot. I'm gonna put a little bit down, and don't do any more than you need because you're just wasting product and you're gonna have to buff off more. So we're just gonna work it in. Yeah, we're definitely gonna need some more oil. And I go from one side to another. So you want enough product on there where it has a slight wet film, but not where it's pooled up. And I'm gonna work it in evenly, and essentially, especially on the first coat, it's mostly just gonna absorb all the way in. You're not gonna really have much to buff off at the end. So anyways, I showed you a little bit by hand, but I really want to speed this up. So I'm gonna put this on there. You can put this really on any sander with the hook and loop. I do suggest, so it doesn't build up gunk, wash it off with like a little, dab it with a rag, like mineral spirits or something, because that's gonna help clean off your hook and loop pad so you don't trash it out. Splattering oil everywhere. Whoa, oopsie daisy. I kind of dropped too much. Let's spread that around so we don't waste it. Oh yeah. So one thing I really like about polishing or using a sander is you go through so much less oil. If I did this by hand, this would have not been enough. But as it turns out, I do have plenty to finish this top of the slab because this makes it stretch out so much further when you use a sander. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I tried reusing this cup earlier today, and when I cleaned it out, apparently I cracked it. But I started with 120 milliliters, because I had 100 of oil, added 20 of the hardener, and I got 70. So I mean, I used like a little less than half. I don't want to waste this. You know what a little trick is? Put this stuff in your refrigerator. We have a little shop refrigerator. It'll be good tomorrow. I'll stir it up. Might have a slight skin on the top. Just stir it up. It can be reused. And since I have a little bit left over, what I'll probably do is just go ahead and put a second coat on the back tomorrow and then flip it over. We're gonna do the top side. But that gives you an idea. 40-inch by 8-foot monkey pod table. You know, took about roughly, let's see, 50 to 60 milliliter. But let's go ahead and finish polishing this up. I'm gonna now work the oil in kind of just all over the table. And I might add a little bit more oil and work it in, but there's some splatters on here. I'm just gonna continue buffing. I do like to continue buffing because it just seems to kind of burnish the oil in and give it a little bit of sheen to it. So let's do some more. Okay, so what we are gonna do, we'll go ahead and hit our live edge with some oil, but I wanted to buff this up a little bit. Here's a sponge sander. I should have done this first, but you know what, it's all right. That's a great thing about furniture oils. If a little bit of dust gets on it, it doesn't even matter because it doesn't build a film like what it does with lacquer. But I want to get the edges done, but I forgot to, it's sanded to like 120. So I'm gonna just hit the edge with this more fine sponge sander, just to make the live edge a touch smoother before I oil it. Now, if I really wanted to, I could easily flip this over, especially we often have like packing blankets and stuff like that. So if I was in a bind and I really needed to get the other side coated the same day, I would just flip it over. You know what, in fact, I might even do that still. But let's get this buffed off first. We might just go ahead and actually flip it over. I might as well, right? Flip it over and get the other side done. I got extra oil. I'm gonna go ahead and do this edge just a little bit first. Where'd my stir stick go? There it is. Okay, so I got that white Scotch-Brite pad from the sander, so we're just gonna put a little bit on there, and I'll just go and hit the edge manually. And you know what? If you're using the sander, you can just stick it right back on there and make that a little quicker, but turn down the speed so it doesn't fling off. Oh yeah, work smarter, not harder. All right, everyone, I'm on day 2 here of finishing. This is the backside of the slab. I put one coat on it, and it turned out really good. What we're gonna do is flip it over. Tim already got the other side sanded. I'm just gonna quick buff it up real quick in case I scuffed it while having it on this side. But if I really needed to get to the other side right away, I could flip it over if you have like a blanket or something when this is applied on that first day. But I'm gonna have Tim give me a hand on flipping it over here. As long as you have a clean flat surface without rocks and bumps underneath it, shouldn't have to worry about it scratching. So, okay, so this side I'm gonna go ahead and hit it up with the sander. It's already pretty well sanded, but we're just gonna make sure we got it all the way. So I'm gonna probably start at 220 because that's pretty dang good. So let's see, 220. We'll do 220 and then 320, and then we can get the oil applied on here. Now yesterday, that oil, I didn't use all that up, as you remember, and I have it still left over. I was able to store it overnight, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. Let's get this sanded real fast. Whoops, daisy, I don't got the vacuum on. Gotta have that vacuum for the dust control. Oh man, already. Oh, that little bit of dust without that vacuum. So I got the applicator pad from yesterday. Since it didn't soak in a whole lot, it's still definitely usable. Stick that right on there. All right, let's get some oil going here. Start on the corner and work our way across. Look at that golden honey. All right, let's get this little bit of a live edge here. I'm gonna do this little Scotch-Brite pad on its own, rather than trying to use the machine right here. And then we can buff it all off. I had some footage yesterday, but my camera died on me. Buffing off with a microfiber cloth. I'll show you that here in a moment. Oh yeah, it's looking beautiful. I'm just putting a little bit on here because I don't want to put too much on this Scotch-Brite for buffing that live edge in. You don't need a whole lot. Here we go. So this side, I worked all that oil in real well, and now we're gonna buff this up. So I just take some microfiber, same thing, just slap it right on there. Balling up on here. I've used this a few times already. Oh yeah, that looks really good. Okay, we'll buff this edge off now. So then what we're gonna do is go ahead and flip it back over. As I said, originally this was intended to be the top side, but after looking at it, I like the other side a little better. So we're gonna flip it back over and second coat that back side, which is now the top side. Okay, everybody, I think I got enough oil left over. Let's see. All right, so when I flipped this over, originally this was supposed to be the back side. So there are a couple of checks here I did not fix the first time because they were backside more than good enough, but now that this is gonna be the front side, I wanna touch up a couple of these cracks. So what I'm using is some Starbond medium with a micro tip, because what I gotta do is get as little junk all over as possible. With the accelerator, so what I'm trying to do is fill in a couple of these bigger cracks, and then I'll barely brush over it with a sander before I apply the final coat. Of course, the goal is to not be doing this in between coats, but that's what happens. I could be less picky, but I don't want to do that neither. So tedious being real picky. There we go. All right, so a few of those bigger cracks I like, they're done. No more than that. Keep going, you're just gonna end up stripping it off. We got the cracks filled, the important part, sealed up good. Beautiful. It's rustic wood. All right, everybody. Now let's get this next coat on here. And remember, so this mix was from yesterday, 120 milliliters. And I'm gonna be able to do this whole table with 120 milliliters, and that's putting one coat on the back side and two on the top side, all the live edges. Because this is gonna take a lot less on the second coat. So that's awesome. It does not take that much product to do a finish when you use the right tools. If you do it by hand and buff it in by hand, you're gonna use more oil versus a power buffer. Okay, so now it's, so if you notice there though, on my second coat, after getting it all applied, I bumped the speed up to high speed. And what the high speed does, causes a little more friction and heat. And the friction and heat helps kind of like burnish that surface per se, kind of build up the sheen. So really, that's where, like I said, you can apply this by hand, no problem. But the fact is, if you want the ultimate polished look and finish, you really need to use some sort of power tool. And that's where, even if you're using your orbital sander, like I mentioned before, you can use a regular orbital sander. But when you get to that second coat, if you have a variable speed polishing tool, like the Festool Rotex works as a polisher and a sander, but even just a variable speed polisher works super good as well, because that higher RPM really helps burnish in that oil nice and beautiful. You virtually have nothing left to buff off. So while I get this live edge in, I'll let that oil sit on the surface. By the time I get this buffed in across everywhere, we will go ahead and do our final microfiber buff, and this thing's gonna really pop. And then we'll wait till tomorrow and apply the Hydrocoat. Now what the Hydrocoat is gonna do is give it a little bit more sheen, but it's also gonna give it a substantial amount of more hydrophobic protection from moisture. So when you're using a hard wax finish, like our Rustic Lumber Furniture Oil, any sort of hard wax is non-film forming, like what a lacquer is gonna be. Now lacquers are gonna be more per se durable up front because they're film forming, but once they start getting worn down and broke down, they start looking worse in my opinion. It all depends on what it's being used for. If you ever look at old, I tell people, go to an old bar that's over 10 years old and you'll see the bar edge where you put your forearms, it's all worn down. Peeling, the lacquer's all peeling. And if that was done with a hard wax oil, you could do a maintenance coat on it. But the hard wax oil is not as water resistant per se as what the furniture oil is, or as the lacquer. Okay, so we got that done. Man, this thing really shines well. Okay. So we got a brand new white microfiber cloth. I like buying these on Amazon, they're inexpensive. And you know what, in fact, what I'm gonna do at the end of this video, I'm gonna link all the products we use from Amazon, like the white cloths, the white Scotch-Brite pads, a bunch of that stuff I just buy in bulk on Amazon because it's less expensive. So we'll simply just go back to using the polishing Rotex, put it right in the middle. I'm gonna turn the RPMs down just a little bit. cord. Beautiful. So we worked off all the product, and you can see there's not much on the microfiber cloth. Now let's just flip it over and go ahead and hit it on the clean side one last time. I can turn the RPMs down this time. Oh boy, that looks really good. Wipe this off. Keep that oil residue off these expensive Festools. You know what? Now we'll just buff it one last time by hand. Kind of inspect it. Oh man, what a beautiful sheen. Once we get this all completed with the Hydrocoat, I'll be sure to bring this outside and get some good angles to really show that beautiful, beautiful sheen. All right, everybody, so you just watched me apply 3 different coats of Rustic Lumber Furniture Oil. We did 2 on the top side, so we did our first yesterday, and then as it turned out, what I thought was gonna be the top side, we turned it into the back side. So we applied 1 coat on that oil on the other side this morning, and then flipped it back over. And this side that I did yesterday, I went ahead and applied the 2nd coat today. So we have 2 coats applied to this, and essentially it's a 24-hour before you do your 2nd coat. I mean, I did it yesterday afternoon. I came back this morning, you know, it's not technically 24 hours, but that's enough. Let's just say the following day, you're ready for your 2nd coat. So what I'm gonna do is let this cure now for the rest of today. I have a beautiful sheen across this piece of monkey pod. And then tomorrow, we're gonna do the last bit of protection and show you how to use our new Hydrocoat ceramic protection to give you the ultimate finish with our Rustic Lumber Furniture Oil. So again, guys, thank you very much for watching this so far. Well, this ain't the end, so I don't need to worry about it. But anyways, let's stay tuned tomorrow. All right, everyone, so we're to the final stage of our finishing process, and what our final top coat is gonna be is our Rustic Lumber Hydrocoat ceramic coating. And what this product is perfect for is to add an extra layer of hydrophobic properties. What it will do is when you spill water on it, any wood surface treated with Hydrocoat, it's gonna beat up the moisture, it's gonna prevent staining, it's gonna make maintenance and cleaning much easier. And if you're using a product like a hard wax oil that doesn't have a permanent coating on it, like a lacquer, you definitely want to use something like the Hydrocoat to give the maximum amount of protection you can have. So now that we applied 2 coats of furniture oil and that is completed and cured, we're gonna make this a nice, quick, simple step. So first thing I'm gonna do, just because of the dust in the shop, we're gonna go ahead and just do a dry dust on the slab. I'll just use, this is good enough, an old cloth, still clean. So we're just gonna give it a nice light dusting. So I did 2 coats of furniture oil. If you wanted a touch more sheen, I have seen quite a few people do 3 coats of furniture oil, but in my opinion, the sheen that the Hydrocoat is gonna add is more than suitable to have that beautiful sheen to it. So just gonna get this last little bit of dust off. Okay, so in our kits of Hydrocoat, what every bottle is gonna come with is 50 milliliters of product. This is a 1-coat application. Our system does not have 2 different products you gotta use. Most of the other ones have a base coat and a top coat. And here's the scoop with that, on my opinion. What they claim is the base coat is the main layer, actually a harder layer, and then the top coat is the top layer that kind of takes the abuse and wear and tear. I mean, I believe if you were to scientifically look at it with a magnifying glass or get real technical level, yeah, the 2-coat system, you know, might have an advantage. But in the real world, with what you can see with your eyes and how a table is gonna really be used, I don't see any advantage of spending the extra money for those 2-coat systems, because the reality is any sort of ceramic coating, whether it's on a vehicle, on a hard surface, a wood surface, no matter what, you're only gonna get so much use out of it before it starts breaking down and wear down. Eventually need a new application. Depending on what you're putting it on, how much the customer is gonna clean it and all, you're gonna get anywhere from about, realistically, 2 years of use before you're gonna need a new application of Hydrocoat. The reality is, with a hard wax oil finish, you're probably gonna every 2 to 6 years do some sort of rejuvenation to your furniture piece anyways, because it's gonna get dull and worn down. And that's the beauty of hard wax oils compared to lacquer, is every few years you can rejuvenate it. You can't do that with the lacquer. So anyways, let's get started. We got our 50 milliliter, this will come with it. And then we have our Hydrocoat application sponges. And then we have these cute little white microfiber cloths. So like I said, each kit is gonna come with 50 milliliters, your application sponge, and 10 of your fiber cloths. So 1 bottle, you should have enough cloths and application. So let's get our first coat, or 1 coat. Now, if you're wanting to apply the Hydrocoat and have more of a dull finish, which this is the directions on our bottle, you would actually apply it and buff it off. But I've since then came up with a new process, and it worked really good, is a non-buffing process. And what it does is, to me, it leaves a little thicker protection. It's gonna build a little sheen. It's gonna do a better job. But there's a very specific process to do a no buff application, because you do not want overlap marks. So let's get started. What I like to do, when this is a brand new pad, it's gonna take a few extra drips per se to prime it, but we do not have dripper spouts on the Hydrocoat. So what I like to do is, it's a wide open mouth. We're gonna put the applicator sponge, and I'm gonna start at one end, flip it over, and just slowly pull my bottle across, tip it back. Do not lift it when it's upside down, because you're gonna have an expensive splash all over. And you're gonna get a nice white, clear application. So we're gonna do this table, size of table, in 4 quadrants. So I'm gonna do a quick roundabout. Now, like I said, it took up most of that in that prime. So let's do another coat. We'll do a couple swishes there. And with any wood surface, it's gonna be absorbent. So a lot of this is just getting soaked in. So right there, that gave us enough product. So now we're gonna do this. We're gonna go, now like what you seen at the beginning, I like to do a box perimeter to get the product all the way around. And then I'll go cross grain and with the grain, and cross grain with the grain, kind of work it back and forth to make sure I get the product spread evenly. Whoopsie daisy. Try to hold on to those 2. We'll go across one more time. And now we're gonna go into the next section. Same thing, we're gonna get some product on there with box to perimeter to get it spread around. And now go across the grain to help spread that. There we go. Now go with the grain. Here we go. And now the trick is to go completely end to end. Now what I'm gonna do, this wood's really soaking in. I'm gonna just wet it one more time. And now we're gonna just go from end to end. And this is gonna help eliminate any possible lap marks. Get that spread across. Eliminate any possible lap marks. It's gonna give one last chance if you have any dry pockets to really get those coated real good, so all the pores of the wood is well sealed in. Just a little bit more. Finish this up. All right, end. And you don't need a lot of product. It's not gonna be like the furniture oil where you really wanna, you know, build it in there This, all you need is enough on the surface to just get the whole surface. I guess you would say just like a moist wet film. Now I'm gonna do the other half. I gotta do it from the other side of the table, so I'm gonna have my back turned to you. I'll tell you what, you know what I can do? Yeah, that's all right. We'll just keep my back turned to you. It's all right. You can enjoy the back side. All right, let's get, whoop, a little application there. Now we'll do the other section. Go across the grain. I'll try to keep my shoulder out of the way here. I might just go ahead and spin this table around. It's kind of tough to give you the right angle to see with my body in the way. And I'm gonna spin this around, everybody, so bear with me for a moment. Now, when you're doing this application process, you don't have to be in a super rush, but try to not waste too much time in between your layers to help give you the best optimal sheen. Okay, a little bit more. So when you apply this product, I've had some people, well, I guess some people, I had one guy so far give us a bad review saying it used too much product. He didn't go as far as it should have, and he didn't believe it did that much to it. Well, once this is cured, you don't have to try that hard to see that it's gonna make a big difference in reducing moisture. I think some people get this idea that ceramic coating is gonna put a visible hard layer over it like polyurethane. And that is not the case. And then use very little. You don't have to dump it on. If you're putting it on where you got like you're pushing moisture across the surface, like there's puddle that you're pushing, it's too much. So now I got those two sections done. I'm just gonna work from end to end, make sure all my lap marks are gone. And like I said, this is a non-buff, no buff method. And yeah, that's beautiful. So I got a little lap right here. Let's do this center part. That's that. We'll kind of check it with our eye at the angles of the light. But I do not see any missed lap marks. There's no dry spots. Okay, all right, everyone. I'm very happy with that. That looks beautiful, and it leaves such a smooth finish. Like once it's dry with your fingers, it just feels so amazing. All right, let's take these off. Oh man, that just feels so good. Okay, well, thank you very much for watching this video on how to do a finish from start to finish. I'm really appreciative of everyone that's tried out our furniture oil. We've had great success this last year. Lots of new customers. Everybody that uses hard wax oil, that use the other brand that everyone knows about, have switched to Rustic Lumber Furniture Oil, has been in love with it. It's a great product. Let's just recap the whole process here. So what I did today is I did this monkey pod slab. We sanded it down. I showed you how to start from 60 grit all the way to 320 grit, how to properly buff and apply 2 coats of furniture oil to give you the optimal sheen, and then how to apply our Rustic Lumber Hydrocoat ceramic coating to give it the ultimate protection. This system right here, you're gonna have great durability out of it. Maintenance is gonna be fairly easy as you can rejuvenate your furniture pieces at any time. The best part of all, it's extremely simple to apply. You don't have to have a professional paint booth. You don't have to have a dust-free environment. You can do this right in your garage. You can just dust it off in between coats. It's a beautiful product and it gives you great sheen. And also, we have, I believe, 10 different colors as well in the 900 milliliter cans. So if you're needing a color finish, be sure to check all those out as well. And we're gonna make some more videos of doing some layering colors or different effects on different species. But thank you everyone, and happy woodworking.